Well, happy Saturday, everybody. This is a monumentous occasion. We have overturned the Rhodes case, at least temporarily, at the Ninth Circuit. How's everybody doing? I am attorney Michael Ehline. I am a natural law rights attorney. I practice personal injury law to make a living because you can't make a whole lot of income practicing natural law, which encompasses things like Second Amendment rights and civil rights. And unfortunately, that's just the way it worked out for my family. But I try to use a lot of the proceeds from my winnings in my personal injury cases to help people understand their rights in the law and pro hoc vice in on Second Amendment rights cases. One of the preeminent Second Amendment rights lawyers in the country, Alan Beck, works with my firm. And I'm also really good friends with Dick Heller, which is really the genesis of where all this law is coming from. And that's really what's been going on, and that's how the Bruin case was able to come into existence. We're going to talk about a little bit of that. I'm on my way to the gym. Good seeing you, Jody Shiloh. Good seeing you, Let's OTVO and Life Under the Microscope. Thanks for joining me this morning. So this is a little bit behind the ball because yesterday I was in depositions all day and then doing deposition reports afterwards. So it's just that's part of practicing law. But I've been practicing law for about 20 years now, and my background is in appellate law, civil rights, criminal defense, personal injury, and I also had a short stint with the LA City Attorney's Office working at the criminal prosecution division, opposing 1538.5 motions. So I really know what I'm talking about, I'd like to think. But more than anything, I'm a natural law rights attorney, and my philosophy is that we need to form parallel systems with one another and that we need to be in a position where we homeschool our children and get them out of the government run schools. Because laws like this Rhodes case under Proposition 63 would have never been passed had it, if not but for a brainwashed citizenry who really think that gun laws are going to do anything to stop criminals. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. All right, so hopefully I've got some decent comms coming in. I'm hoping. What's going on, Pro Say America? Good seeing you, brother. And Heidi Gray, I'm streaming from Summerlin, Nevada today, and I'm on my way over to the gym to get a chest workout in, do some stretching, maybe do some stationary bike for a little while. I've been dealing with a really bad bout of sciatica from an injury that I suffered when I was in the Marine Corps, and I'm disabled from that about 70%. And as I get older and older, the worse it gets for my knee and for my back. But here I am talking to you guys with my whole left leg on fire because I'm sitting down. But that's what we do when we're trying to save our country. So, really quickly, I'm just going to give you a breakdown of the law. So, this was a law that was passed in 2016 when Gavin Newsom was the lieutenant governor of California. And basically, the state of California is basically like a communist stronghold. And by the way, I just wanted to show you how totalitarian they are. They're just like communist China, in my opinion. Thanks, Pro Se America. Yeah, I mean, being injured is a really tough thing. So that's something that I worry about people like you who are injured because it prevents you from being as productive as you can be. And then we feel like, at least guys like you and I, we feel like we become a burden on society. We never want to do that. We always want to contribute to society, not just take their taxes and get a free ride from a communist government like California. Because there's no such thing as free. There's always a catch. All right. So the first thing before we get too far into this is none of these laws apply to cops. None of these laws apply to peace officers. So ammo taxes, ammo background ammunition checks, um, standard capacity magazine bans, the drop list in California where you're forced to buy a Gen 3 Glock because Glock doesn't want to pay the outrageous fee per firearm to pass what's called the drop test, where someone drops it on the ground to make sure it doesn't go off. I mean, obviously, it's stupid. It's just a way for these idiots over in California to restrict your individual unalienable rights. They come up with these stupid ideas, and then they get these morons who were brainwashed in the public school system to go along with it. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So the only thing that I can say is you can learn a lot about your government by how they make the laws not apply to them. Okay. Police have zero duty to protect individuals. And when your government flooded your country with over 20 million, by some estimates, illegal aliens, at least 5 million gotaways, many of them released from prisons in Central or South America, just to flood into your country and immediately get free stuff from the government, free hotels, free everything. Less than 3% actually got jobs. Okay, so that means they're living off of you, the taxpayer. Many of them violent criminals, military age males, and tries to restrict your ability to defend your rights and your family with a firearm. You better start thinking very seriously about who you're voting for. All right, that's all I got to say about that. Good seeing you, Let's OTVO. So yeah, that's right. None of these laws ever apply to the police, which really bothers me because we're living in a police state when that happens. Everyone else is a criminal, but the police get a pass. Okay, and we've seen countless videos online of police violating people's rights all the time. So why is it that when they violate someone's rights, they get qualified immunity, which means it's presumed that what they did was within their duties as a police officer and therefore immune from prosecution or suit? Think about that. Hey, 357 Sig beats 9. Good seeing you, man. Yeah, I'm going to get them reps in, double. Hoorah. All right, so really quickly, I'm going to give you a breakdown of Prop 63 so you can get a better idea of how it works. All right. So Proposition 63, again, was approved by California voters in 2016 when Comrade Gavin Newsom was lieutenant governor. The idea was to enhance gun control, of course, because that's what all Democrats want to do. They want to enhance, they want to take away your ability to defend your family and keep and bear arms, or make it so difficult and so expensive that you'll just give up. And so we've seen a mass exodus from the state of California. By some estimates, around 500,000 people like me. I fled with my family to homeschool my kids in a free state. Uh, and small business owners who were sick and tired of Gavin Newsom and his illegal aliens using the census to redistrict the state blue further. And that's what the Democrat states have been doing. They've been flooding sanctuary cities with illegal aliens, and then upon the next census count, they can redistrict the state blue. So they basically said, hey, we're going to flood the country with criminals and people who don't care about our laws, people who do not want to assimilate. They want to wave their flags and burn our cities and say that we need to return back to Mexico or something. I mean, thank God we're not like Tijuana. Well, actually, California is now. And then Pro Se America, I stayed to fight too for a long time, but eventually I realized after having children that, like Martin Luther, when he was fighting against the Pope, maybe it was better to fight in exile where you're not living under the confiscatory laws and regulations. But that's just me personally. I'm still fighting for you guys, but I'm doing it in a free state now. So the key provisions related to ammunition and basically what the law requires under Prop 63 is background checks for ammunition. And so the purchases required individuals to pass that check for each purchase conducted through a licensed dealer. By the way, a lot of licensed dealers are fleeing California because Newsom and his communist friends in the California state legislature, the uniparty state of California, it's like 99% left. And by most estimates, if the illegal aliens were deported from California, California would lose 5 Democrat seats. The Democrats would never have a chance at holding a majority again in California. And California would once again become a free state. And so you can see why illegal aliens are so important to the Democrat Party and why I always harp on it, because it's a big deal. So the firearms dealer, without getting paid any extra money, so they have to raise their fees again, we're now required to conduct a background check just so you can purchase some ammo for your firearm, all right? So buyers were checked against a criminal mental health, and mental health is anything they say it is. If you disagree with a California public school teacher that your son is really a girl, well, since they're mandatory reporters under California law, they can report you to Bonta, their attorney general, for example, and have you declared mentally unfit and take your kids away. And that actually happens in California, guys. Don't think that it doesn't. It really does. All right. So, and they were checked to see if they had a restraining order in this prohibitive database via the Department of Justice's ammunition purchase authorization program. Okay. So there was a fee of $1 per transaction with additional costs, and up to $19 for non-residents or those needing eligibility checks for processing. So a processing fee to make sure you're eligible. So all these firearms dealers are forced to do this. And of course, these firearms dealers don't support any of this stuff. They're Second Amendment guys. So they're forced to become Communist Party apparatchiks for the Democrat Party. So what are they doing? They're leaving. They're leaving California. Why would you stay as a Second Amendment rights firearms dealer? Why would you stay in California? And that's what they want. They don't want you to be able to access firearms or ammo. And since they kept on losing at the higher courts, well, the communist Soviet Socialist Republic of California said, hey, let's go after the ammo. Let's go after components. Let's outlaw triggers. Let's outlaw sight tips. Let's outlaw anything we can. Oh, it looks black and dangerous. Let's outlaw that because it looks like a military weapon. Let's do whatever we can to make it impossible for these people to keep and bear arms. So let me see here. Yeah, so Pro Se America says that just got overturned 2 days ago. Well, and I'm doing good, brother. Well, yesterday is when the ammo ban got overturned. Now, the magazine ban is a different issue. We'll talk about standard capacity magazines and firearms components besides ammo in another show. All right, but I'm definitely going to cover that. So basically, it banned direct online ammo purchases, and it said that ammo has to be purchased in person from a licensed firearm dealer, all right, after your background check. And then out-of-state vendors were no longer allowed to ship ammo to California residents. They had to go through a licensed dealer. And so let me just tell you how ridiculous this is, all right? So they even passed a penal code section. Penal code section 30312 said that if you brought ammo from another state without first shipping it to a California dealer and then paying them a fee to store it, because obviously the dealer is going to charge you a storage fee, right? Only then could you buy the ammo that you purchased in another state. You couldn't drive it across. So if you went shooting, and this is where Rhodes comes into play. So Rhodes was a female, I think she was a 3-gun shooter, professional competition shooter, was going into other states. And of course, you go to Arizona to shoot, you're going to buy your ammo in Arizona because it's super cheap compared to Communist California, right? Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. And so when I go to the range, let me just share with you what I do. I'll typically pop off 900 to 1,000 rounds. I'll probably do 500 rounds of 45 ACP, maybe a couple hundred rounds out of a couple of different 9s that I have. And then I'll get into the 5.56 ammo out of my AR-15 platforms and maybe do some 7.16 by 39s out of my AKMS 47 platforms. So I might leave there firing 1,500 rounds. That's a typical gun day for me. So I'm the kind of guy that's going to want to have at least 20,000 rounds on hand. And so Rhodes probably had more. So she's popping off rounds. If she's doing 3 guns, she's doing shotgun shells. She's doing 308, 7.62s. She's doing 5.56s if she's doing AR platforms. So she's popping off a lot of ammo. Now, the law said that she could not bring that back to California with her without going through a licensed California dealer to make sure she paid her tax and had a background check, okay? Every single time she wanted to do that. And so I think she argued as applied as well as on its face. So under the law, you can argue that a statute as applied is unconstitutional, like what I think Lane Meyer should have done. Lane Meyer should have probably stayed in jail and argued that the harassment statute as applied to him was unconstitutional, as well as on its face unconstitutional. But that's another story we can talk about at another time. I'm not him. I'm not putting him down. I wasn't in jail. When you're in jail, you'll plead out to anything. That's what they did with the Jan 6ers. All right. So, and you're right, Network, Metatron. Good seeing you, brother. I love having it. Make sure to double tap that screen and make sure to like and subscribe and share this link with everybody after we do the show. and go into the regular comments, not just these comments that are live, not just the live chat, but go in and make some comments under the video and share it with people so we can push that algo and get this information out there to law-abiding, freedom-loving Americans who believe in the unalienable rights that were granted to us by our creator, not the state. All right. So basically it ruled that vendors had to obtain an ammunition vendor's license, so they had to pay for that. So they're putting another fee on firearms dealers. That gets passed on to the end purchaser as well. So, like when I was growing up, you could purchase 22 ammo for like a half a cent a round or less. And what this did is make even 22 rounds rise to the price of what you'd have to pay for a box of some decent 5.56 in another state. It was ridiculous. So now that had to do with just the background check. That doesn't include Assembly Bill 28 taxes, which we still have to address in another video. Okay, this is more about the background check that just got temporarily overturned at the Ninth Circuit. We're going to talk about that in just 1 second. So it classified any ammunition sales without doing this as a violation that would make it an infraction or a misdemeanor or worse, because California could try and pull your firearms permit. And even though it's federal, they could find a way to get you busted and take away your ability to have a firearms permit license to sell firearms to other end users. Okay. So now, Lieutenant Governor Newsom said that the law, when he was a lieutenant governor, a comrade, communist piece of garbage, Gavin Newsom, said that it would reduce gun violence by preventing prohibited for persons like felons or those with certain mental health issues, like parents who refuse to go along with their blue-haired, rainbow flag-waving public school teacher, that their son is really a girl, and try to have him wear dresses and call him a they, them during school and keep it a secret from the parents, right? And that absolutely does go on in California and Colorado. It absolutely does. And we can do a show about that in another day. So anybody like that could be prohibited from buying ammunition, thanks to then Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. All right. So they said that it would close loopholes in gun sales regulations. Well, we all know that felons and criminals, especially illegals who already broke our laws to come into the country, are going to buy their ammo in another state where they don't have to do that, or they'll bring it across. What do they care? All they have to do is change their name, go back across the border, come back again, and get some free SNAP benefits, get declared temporarily protected, right? Temporarily protected status, and get some SNAP benefits and some free shit from you and I, so they can help the Dems redistrict everything blue using the U.S. Census. That's how it works. Go to a sanctuary city. There's no sanctuary cities in red states, guys. Hello. So let's talk about it a little bit more. So the Ninth Circuit on a 3-judge panel, which is unbelievable. Remember, the Pope, Judge Benitez, had issued a temporary restraining order to halt this. And then, of course, the Ninth Circuit said, no, no, no. But then the Bruin decision came out. And the Bruin decision basically said, well, no, no, no. We have to look at things in the historical context, all right? They had to use a historical analog. What did our founding fathers, or under Reconstruction, what were the gun laws then? And, of course, there were no gun laws about paying to have a background check to buy ammo. There were no background checks at all. If you're a freeborn American, you're entitled to keep and bear arms. That's how it worked. So Bruin really ruined everything for the Democrats. They're very upset about the Bruin case, and that's why they're doing everything they can to get more leftist Marxists into the court system so they can change Bruin and Heller and get those overturned and make us more like communist China, which is precisely what they want. They want us to be like Canada. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. All right. So right now, a 3-judge panel, 2 of them sent it back and said, we're issuing a restraining order, or an injunction, basically, that no, that law is unenforceable. But Bonta, the leftist Attorney General of California, probably in line to be their next governor, unless they boot out all the illegals and turn red again, because they'll lose about 5 House seats if the illegals have to leave. At the next census count, it'll turn back into a red state again. Because most people in California do not support the Marxist policies of California, or they've already left. So let's get into it. So this case was influenced by New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin again. And that didn't really redefine, it basically brought the standard back to historically what it was. And when it came to making a Second Amendment rights challenge, and it established that firearms regulations must be consistent with the historical tradition, of firearm regulation in the United States at the time of the Second Amendment's adoption in 1791 or Reconstruction in 1868. Um, with respect to laws imposing restrictions on Second Amendment rights, they had to have a historical analog, which we just discussed. Otherwise, they're presumptively unconstitutional. The burden is on the state or the government to prove that the regulation aligns with historical practices. So, in a nutshell, that's what Bruin says. So, since ammunition is an integral part of a firearm, this three-judge panel said no. And so Judge Kenneth Lee, in the majority opinion, concluded that ammunition is, in fact, a critical component of a firearm, a critical component of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. All right. The court reasoned that firearms are useless without ammunition. Excuse me. Liking ammunition to ink uh, for a First Amendment right, like free speech, right, or the right to petition the government. They're both essential to exercising a respective constitutional right. The Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms, and the court interpreted arms to include ammunition as a necessary functional exercise of that right. Hello. Well, Pro Se America, that's great. Vem Miller's podcast on Wednesday. I'll have to take a look at it, brother. Um, so and it it's not just components essential to their use. As a Second Amendment rights lawyer, I got to tell you, it's components essential to their safe and effective use. That's why there should not be a ban on suppressors, or what we used to call silencers, because they don't really silence the weapon, because it protects your ear, so it makes it more safe and effective to use, right? Safe and effective, the word that the Democrats like to throw around all the time when they want to inject you with something. All right. So, because there was lack of historical precedent, California argued that the background check law was analogous to historical laws restricting ammunition access to certain groups. So, here's what California argued: people who were at war with our state, like the Native Americans and the British, right? Since there were laws restricting them, that your rights should be restricted too. Think about that. California literally argued that people who were at war with the citizens of California, since their rights were restricted, that this law passed constitutional muster. That's literally what their argument is. That's everything you need to know about the Marxist Democrats who run California. All right? They literally are, in a nutshell, in a backhanded way, saying these people are enemies of California if they want to have firearms, and therefore their rights should be restricted. However, the court found these examples insufficient. Well, two of them, anyways. The probably the more conservative ones that didn't go to Harvard, maybe, found no, that's ridiculous. And they said these laws were not widespread or reflective of a broad tradition of regulating ammunition sales for law-abiding citizens. There you go. The court noted that while some historical laws did regulate gunpowder storage for safety reasons, like fire prevention, these were distinct from a blanket background check requirement for all ammunition purchases. The state failed to provide evidence of a historical tradition imposing these types of broad restrictions on ammo. So they found that it was an undue burden on the few that are left, law-abiding citizens in California. The court found that the background check system imposed significant burdens on law-abiding gun owners. Data cited in the ruling showed that from 2019 to 2023, the system rejected 2,581 eligible individuals every month due to errors or delays, and only 0.04% of denials, about 1 in 2,500, identified a prohibited person, whatever that is, whatever they want it to be. Probably somebody who was a military veteran or someone who doesn't go along with their transgender ideology. They're a prohibited person. The requirement to purchase ammunition in person or through dealers, combined with the fees, was deemed excessive and an excessive restriction on the exercise of Second Amendment rights for those in rural areas or with limited access to licensed vendors. So let's compare this to voter ID. So Democrats have been arguing for years that black people aren't intelligent enough to obtain an ID to prove that they're actually an American before they can vote. But yet you have to provide an ID and you have to meet in person in the age of Zoom and like right now, communicating over Zoom or over YouTube, you have to drive or get yourself to a firearms dealer in person, face to face, right? But yet they want you to be able to vote by mail, right? Vote by mail with no way to prove that you're even a citizen, right? Using their leftist friends at the post office to help promulgate and facilitate, in my opinion, fraudulent elections. So it's just, they're such hypocrites, it makes me sick to my stomach. So, judicial precedent and injunction. In this case, Road versus Bonta was initially challenged in 2020 when Pope Benitez, our favorite justice down in San Diego, I think it's a magistrate judge, if I'm not mistaken, issued a permanent injunction against the background check requirement, finding it unconstitutional. This is the other problem with the court system. It takes years after one of these laws are passed to successfully challenge it. And during that time, there could be several presidential elections. And once the wrong president gets into power, he puts another one of these morons, perhaps, on the Supreme Court. He might put a Ketanji Brown who can't even define the difference between a male and a female. Think about that. Doesn't even understand the biological differences between a male and a female on the bench. These are the types of people who are going to be passing laws to restrict your right to keep and bear arms. So think about that. So the Ninth Circuit paused his injunction and they allowed the law to take effect, which basically made it impossible for people of limited means or income to be able to buy ammo in California. But then the Bruin decision came out, and that prompted a reevaluation. So the Ninth Circuit's July ruling yesterday upheld the injunction and struck down the background check requirement is unconstitutional under the Bruin framework. But the court did not address other Proposition 63 provisions and gun control measures unrelated to ammunition, as well as AB, I think it's 26 or 28 provision on ammo taxes. So we still have a lot of work to do. So the ammunition is now deemed an integral part of a firearm. Well, it always was. Of course, you can't use a gun without ammo, guys. I mean, come on. You have to be someone who went to a Marxist-run university or a Marxist-run public school system to believe any of this stuff is actually valid or logical. All right. So the court's determination that ammunition is part of the Second Amendment's protection stems from legal reasoning and practical consideration, functional necessity being one of them. And so the court emphasized that firearms can't function without ammo, making them an inseparable component of the right to keep and bear arms. Hello, for self-defense, which implicitly includes access to ammo. At the time of the Second Amendment's ratification, arms were understood to include not just firearms, but also their necessary components. I mean, can you believe we have to have a bunch of judges rule on this? It's so stupid. So the court found no historical tradition of regulating ammunition for law-abiding citizens in a manner comparable to Prop 63. And then other circuits also align with this under the post-Bruin rulings. And so, like the Fifth Circuit's decision in United States versus Quiroz, Quiroz, and that's a 2023 case, which struck down a federal law prohibiting ammunition possession by felons, affirming that ammunition falls under the Second Amendment. Governor Newsom condemned the ruling, of course. I mean, he doesn't want you to have firearms. I mean, why would any totalitarian ruler, Mao Zedong, Joe Stalin, right? Why Hitler, why would they want you to have firearms? That would give you the ability to throw off an unjust ruler, an unjust government. Hi, Lynn, good seeing you. So he argued that it undermined voter-approved gun safety measures. Well, look, you can convince voters to vote against their rights, offer them a free check, Brainwash them in public schools to hate the founding fathers. It's that simple. Start tearing down monuments of people like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. Just say they were slave owners and they were evil. And that makes it even easier to completely overturn all the Bill of Rights. Because, well, these evil white men, the dangerous, most dangerous people in the world, they're the ones who passed this terrible Bill of Rights. So we need to overturn the Bill of Rights too, because it's racist also. We'll come up with anything. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So this is a minor victory, but the leftists say that it's a setback for public safety, which we all know leftists don't abide by gun laws, or criminals don't abide by gun laws. So it really doesn't. And there, oh, by the way, no evidence has been shown, statistically or otherwise, that restricting someone's right to buy ammo does anything to protect the public safety. If anything, it makes it harder for people like you and I to be able to defend our families, homes, and hearths. That's right, Jeff hates pigs. Good seeing you, Jeff Osgood and Jeff and Kurt Bronson. So now, with respect to the ammo ban tax, that's a Proposition 63. Strike that. Uh, Assembly Bill 28 imposed an 11% excise tax on firearms and ammunition. This is another way that the left is trying to keep you from being able to exercise your Second Amendment rights. But the penal code section that prohibits you from transporting ammo across state lines unless it goes through a licensed firearms dealer is now on hold. So it may have made it easier for you to go to a free state and buy ammo and bring it across without paying that crazy tax. But the ruling obviously is going to prompt California's Marxist government to appeal to the full Ninth Circuit to try to get an en banc panel. And we know that the Ninth Circuit is mainly run by Democrats, so it'll likely end up going to the Supreme Court, and they'll probably reimpose the restrictions. So right now there is a mad dash of the people of the state of California to buy as much ammo as they can. That's what's happening right now. So the Ninth Circuit did strike down the ammunition background check law because it lacked historical precedent and imposed undue burdens on law-abiding citizens, and affirmed that ammunition is integral to the Second Amendment right to bear arms due to its essential role in firearms functionality. The decision reflects an evolving landscape of Second Amendment jurisprudence post the Bruin decision. All right. So California still does have the right to tax ammo per purchase. All right. So they're still going to do their confiscatory ammo tax laws and all this other stuff. And since the federal government also has, I believe, an unconstitutional law in place that allows that, they'll probably win on that until we get a decent Supreme Court that actually strikes that law down at a federal level. So, and that tax is in addition to the federal excise tax, which is already 10 to 11%, depending on the firearm. So you're looking at about a 20 to 21% tax to buy ammo still in communist Fornia. Pretty scary shit. And of course, they say that the revenue is used to fund gun prevention. So what they really do is they bring people in, or they bring curriculum into their public schools to say, oh, the Second Amendment's evil. Nobody should have guns. That's their idea of gun safety, to convince school children while they're still very young and impressionable, not only that boys are girls and that girls are boys, but the Second Amendment is evil and having a firearm is a terrible thing. Unless, of course, you're a cop, and then it's perfectly okay. So they call them school safety initiatives. All right. So they're literally using your taxes to brainwash a whole generation of children into thinking the Second Amendment is bad and that firearms are bad. And that's the next generation of judges. And that's why I advocate for homeschooling. Get your kids out of the public school system immediately. Immediately. Their minds are like Play-Doh, and it's your job as a parent to educate them, not the state. Not like Malcolm X said, why would you let your enemy raise your children? All right. So this law didn't address the AB 28 excise tax. And so the California Rifle and Pistol Association, who I support, are still going to challenge that tax in court, but no judicial ruling has invalidated it as of yet. So the excise tax on ammo remains in effect, and California can still legally impose its per purchase unless future court rulings deem it to be unconstitutional. So I'm going to head to the gym, and we'll keep talking until we get to the gym. And as I stop at stop signs, I'll try to answer any questions that I can. By the way, guys, this is a donations only channel, so I recommend, super chats, even if it's $1.99. That definitely helps me because I pay my kids to help me with the shorts and editing and stuff like that. I'm teaching them how to start their own business. So by you helping me with this channel, you're literally helping me homeschool my kids to teach them how to become independent from the government and government run schools. And if you don't want to do that, I recommend that you purchase as many blocks of paid subscription memberships as you can. They're very cheap, and what'll happen is that YouTube will send out blocks of paid subscriptions to new people that it believes would be supportive of our goals of creating parallel systems, homeschooling, homesteading, teaching your children entrepreneurialism, and things of that nature. So we can bring more people into the fold of Team MPE and be able to teach them about their unalienable God granted rights that were given to them by their creator under natural law. And for those of you who want to learn more about natural law, do a search for John Locke. I don't recommend you use Google because I don't support them. They're a bunch of commies. But try to find a somewhat more pro-USA search engine, if it's possible to do that. Learn about John Locke and learn about the battle between John Locke and Hobbes against your unalienable God-granted rights to keep and bear arms and to be free from government, because less government means more freedom. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. And I also have a book. I'm working on my revised edition. The one that I had wasn't that well written. So my daughter's helping me with my book on how to become a lawyer with no law degree or undergrad in the state of California, as well as similar programs offered in a few states, where I go into the history of law schools and in government run academia and government programs where they try to brainwash people into supporting whatever the state wants you to do, which we don't believe in on our channel. We believe that we, the people, should be able to decide how to rear our children, not Gavin Newsom and his rainbow flag mafia. So, in any event, let's just talk a little bit about the Bruin decision, because that's really the foundation of Rhodes and what happened with her. So again, Rhodes is a professional shooter. She shoots in competitions, and she was going to other states and she was buying ammo to fire her firearms there. Of course, you don't shoot off all your ammo at every competition. Hey, and your trigger finger starts to get sore after a while as well. So what ended up happening is she's like, well, I'm going to be in violation of the law if I transport this ammo back into California. So she was forced to either dump the ammo in the state that she was in or give it away, right? Or ship it to a licensed firearm dealer in California and then, pay outrageous amounts of money to do that. And so that's what this challenge in Rhodes was based on. And it's really a limited victory because, like I said, what will usually end up happening, because it is the Ninth Circuit, it's the most overturned circuit in the nation. What'll happen is it will go to an en banc panel, and that means the full panel of all the judges at the Ninth Circuit. And these judges at the Ninth Circuit, at least the Marxists, are accused by many legal scholars who are not Democrats of being far left Marxists, judicial activists. And their goal is to strip you completely of your right to keep and bear arms. They don't believe that people like you and I should have the right to keep and bear arms. They believe that only the government or the state should be able to keep and bear arms. Just like Mao Zedong, their fearless leader, who they're taught in public schools that Che Guevara and Mao Zedong and on the college campuses, they're great. Those guys are wonderful. But people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, bad. They're evil because well, they had slaves. So that invalidates everything that they did. And they literally do teach that in the public schools and in the Marxist run college campuses in this country. And they use taxpayer money to subsidize that. So think about that. Do you really want your money being used to do that, guys? So while I'm stopped here, does anybody have any questions in particular they want me to answer? Again, I am an attorney licensed. Well, I'm a member of the bar in the state of California as well as Texas. I've been practicing law for a little over 20 years. And before that, I was a paralegal and I was also a small business owner. I've owned several businesses, and my background is in construction. And I am one of about 80 people at the time who became a member of the California State Bar with no law degree or undergrad. And then later, after I was already a practicing attorney, I received a law degree from the University of West Los Angeles, which is a California bar certified school. And I believe at the time, more judges in California came from that school than any other law school in the country, which is kind of interesting, considering that I disagree with most California jurisprudence when it comes to natural law and the Second Amendment. And so my reasoning behind that is that I was fortunate enough to have parents to put me through a good private school while I was young and teach me about our founding fathers, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. My father having been a combat Marine, having done 2 tours in Vietnam, helped give me the foundation that I needed to withstand the peer pressure of the Marxist-run education in law schools in California. And make no mistake about it, I mean, California law schools, I don't think there was a single law professor in my school who is not a card-carrying member of the Marxist Democrat Party. So you've got these kids coming out of law school completely skewed to the radical left. And that is what you're going to get as a judge. That is what you're going to get as a law professor. And that is what you're going to get as most government employees, prosecutors, as well as public defenders, public pretenders. So basically, it creates what I call a uniparty system. And it invalidates, thwarts, and ridicules free thought. And so one of the purposes behind my channel, guys, and by the way, thank you so much for the donation. I just saw a donation. I'm sorry that I'm driving, so I don't want to get in a wreck. But somebody just donated to the channel, and I do appreciate that. Hey, look, guys, even $3, $2, I don't care what it is. All that goes to helping me show my children that you can start your own online business and you can, make a living. And so I share that with my kids, and I donate a large portion of it to other channels that I support, like the 10th Amendment. I think it's the 10th Amendment Foundation. And that's what we do over here at Team MPE. I'm a natural law attorney, and I want to be able to educate people as to what their historical rights are as free-thinking, free men upon the land, not subjects to the jurisdiction thereof, but free men and women who believe that their rights come from a creator, just like it says in the Declaration of Independence, not from the state, just like it says in the Communist Manifesto, right? So 2 distinct ideologies here. The Democrat California version, the Marxist version, that your rights come from the government, and the constitutional historical version that your rights come from a creator, and because of that, they cannot be restricted by the state. Shall not be infringed is the foundation of the ideology of Team MPE and the people who like to watch my channel. And this morning, and again, it's unfortunate that I have not been able to go live that much this week, so I'm doing my best to do lives while I'm driving. I know that I lose a lot of audience because you guys like the green screen and you like the reaction videos, and I'm going to do more of that, but at least I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to meet with me this weekend and discuss a really, really interesting case that means a lot to me, being a friend of Dick Heller of District of Columbia versus Heller, which is the genesis of the Bruin and Rhodes decisions. And so to me, this is a great victory, but all it takes, we're always one generation away from losing our freedom. And the Marxist Democrats know that. And that's why they really have hammered down on the public school system to teach Marxist ideology and anti-American philosophy. And so I want to give a little plug to my friend Brett Pike of Cubs to Bears Books. If any of you have children and they're in the Marxist run education system, I highly, highly recommend that you reach out to Brett Pike at Cubs to Bears Books. This is a non-paid endorsement. And learn about his homeschooling program, which you can do online. And start taking back control of the minds of your children before it's too late. Because it won't take very long for these public schools to completely brainwash your children into voting away their rights, like they've done in California as adults already. The Gen Zers, the millennials, the atrazine infected high estrogen males who work at Starbucks as professional baristas while they're paying off hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans for degrees in underwater basket weaving and gender studies, right? Let's teach our kids about how to become a professional air condition repairman, how to become a plumber, how to build a house, how to fix a sink, how to run a business. Let's do that instead, guys. Let's take back the minds of our children. So that would be Brett Pike over at Cubs to Bears Books. Good friend of mine. Really, really respect him a lot. He's a homesteader. And let's teach our kids about homesteading, getting off the grid, growing your own food. Get off the Bill Gates nonsense, the appeal coating that they put on all your apples and your vegetables to make you sick, right? And let's get back to natural, organic foods. None of this GMO crap. Let's get back to teaching our kids a little bit about Psalms and Proverbs, a little bit about respect for their elders. Let's teach your son how to open doors for old people, how to respect their elders because they're going to be old someday too. Let's teach our kids civility towards women and the sanctity of the woman in particular, because they are the givers of life. They're the ones who give us children. And as men, give us happiness, give us a reason to live besides being selfish and just taking care of ourselves. I can tell you right now, guys, that as a father, shortly after having children, my income probably tripled. And I don't know why, but I've talked to a lot of my other friends too. To a T, all of us became far more successful, far more disciplined, and far more responsible after having children. And it's only natural. God made man and woman for a reason. It wasn't for butt plugs. It wasn't for same-sex marriage. It was so we could reproduce and procreate and find happiness with our children and make sure that we didn't make the same mistakes that our parents made. To give them an opportunity to learn from the mistakes that our parents made by us not making those same mistakes. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So I'm almost to the gym, guys, but I'm hoping this was a productive session today. Obviously, it's not one of my more popular topics, but it's something that means a lot to me. And so I think we got up to about 50 in the show today. So today I've got a busy day. I'm taking my son to judo. I'm trying to groom him into becoming an Olympic judo champion. And it's hard with young kids. They're very rebellious. But you need to instill that Marine Corps-like discipline into your boys and be on them like flies on Democrat poop. Because if you're not, they will absolutely allow themselves to be groomed by the rainbow flag mafia in the public school system. And you don't want that. You're the one who brought those children into this world, not some blue-haired freak who thinks that Che Guevara is a hero. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Now, and again, me being a libertarian, I'm totally cool with other people's lifestyle choices. You know, if you're a dude and you want to hook up with another dude or whatever, that's totally cool. I don't have a problem with that at all. Have at it, man, but stay the F away from my kids. Don't try to push that shit on my kids. Roger that? That's all it's about, man. It's my job as a parent to decide my child's political and worldview, not yours. So stay away from my kids. Stop trying to get jobs in the public school system so you can get closer to my kids. That's all. It's not that big of a deal. Just leave my kids alone. Most of you guys, by the way, thanks for showing up, Let's TVO. And yeah, think about the thought police. That's right. So I almost made it to the gym. And so for all you guys and girls who think that you don't have time to work out, it's all about time management. Get on a high protein diet. Talk to my friend over at Life Under the Microscope. He's one of my moderators. Make sure to like and subscribe to his channel and learn as much as you can about proper nutrition, about just having protein and water, man. Stay off the sugar and stay off the comfort food and get to the gym. Do stretching. If you're young enough, get into an art like judo or jiu-jitsu. Learn discipline. Teach your kids to respect their elders and make sure to find a good woman. Make sure that you find a good woman who understands the differences in biology between men and women, who you can support, protect, and defend the same way that I support, protect, and defend the Constitution, as well as members of my channel. So, unless anybody has any questions, I'll just stick around for a few seconds. And by the way, thank you for, I'm just scrolling down to make sure to thank anybody that I missed. Thank you, Kurt Bronson, for the $2 donation. Thank you for supporting my channel, brother. Means a lot to me, man. Reluctant Prophet, good seeing you, man. Don't eat cups of noodles, dude. That's high carbs. That's not good for you. So it says here, in Texas, you can't use your guns unless you have gun insurance. Well, that's crazy. I didn't know that. That's wild. Chris 1005 says, what are your views on allegations against the 6-hour P320? You know what, man? I've heard that it'll blow your balls off. I've never been a SIG guy. I have all my guns are Glocks. Well, no, I've got a lot of non-Glocks, but my everyday carry and my house guns are always Glocks. And I have them customized by Taryn Butler over at Taryn Tactical. He's the guy who makes the guns for the John Wick movies, and he's my buddy. And I've been having my guns built by him ever before he was even popular, because I knew that he made the best triggers, the best resets, and he used the best. So I never was a big SIG fan. I do have a VP9, primarily because my wife has smaller hands, and I really do like the HK VP9, but I'm going to have a better trigger put on it. I just don't like the smushy trigger reset on the VP9. And I don't like stock Glocks. I make sure to always put Trigicons, and I always make sure to put a better trigger. And I always have graphite, or I have customized grips to make them, if you have sweaty hands, they don't fall out of your hand. But obviously, my favorite is an AR-15. And my AR-15, hey, Gloria, good seeing you. My AR-15 is always going to be my go-to, even for house gun. Remember, your handgun is more for like a concealed carry weapon or an easy access car weapon. It's very difficult to use a rifle when you're in a vehicle or trying to get one out. And Reluctant Prophet, I've shot all SIGs pretty much. I don't like the trigger resets on them, and I'm just not a big SIG fan. There's just so many great firearms, but I'm not against SIGs. I just don't know enough about the different what's been going on with the exploding SIG allegation. Yeah, Daniel Defense is fine. So I try to make my own. I'll typically get I'll buy a lower from a firearms dealer, and then I'll just build it. I'll put my own upper on it, my own custom barrel. I like to build my own stuff. Typically, I'm going to go with piston when it comes to an AR, because I like to blow out. I don't have to clean it as much. I get lazy sometimes, but at least my kids know how to clean firearms. But I'll be honest with you, Chris 1005, my favorite handgun out of all of them is the 1911. I love the 1911. I believe it's, besides a Luger, it's the most accurate firearm for a pistol there is. But it's a 45 ACP. And so I like the knockdown power of a 45 ACP. The problem with the 1911 is it has to be always well oiled and cleaned. And right now, my go-to 1911, just to have fun with on the range, would be my M45. A friend of mine who was in MARSOC had the Colt Custom Shop come out when they still stamped USMC on the slide, and they gave them the first dibs to buy him. So I was able to purchase his before he left California to become a mercenary, and I just love shooting that thing. It's all tan, it's Cerakoted, it's dope, man. But it's basically a 1911 with Picatinny rail at the base, and a little thicker. It's got some different features, but other than that, it's basically a 1911 that's Cerakoted, but it's made by the Colt Custom Shop. So that's my absolute favorite is going to be the M45, and then the 1911 frame. But for failsafe, maybe a Makarov, but I don't use Makarovs. It's going to be the Glock. If you want a fail-safe weapon, in my opinion, thank you, Max Kammerer. If you want a fail-safe pistol, in my opinion, out of the box, I would say for a house gun, it would be a G21, a Glock 21. It's a 45 ACP. It's a 13 round standard capacity magazine. And then for everyday carry, at least for now, I've heard that the Glock's got some other thinner grip versions that are similar, but it would be the Glock 19. I think that a Glock 19, I think it's 19, 17 rounds maybe, or maybe 15. Can't remember because I typically want to carry an extended magazine on my everyday carry. The Glock 19, if you want to have a fail-safe gun, in my opinion, the Glock 19 for everyday carry concealability is awesome. For a car gun, probably want a G21 just to have in your car, just because I like the knockdown power of a 45 ACP. It's slow and big, which means it's not going to be doing as much pass-through. It's going to put its inertial energy into the person or attacker coming after you, as opposed to just going through them, which I think the 10 mil does, and the 40 does, and the 9 mil does more. And yeah, you can use hollows, you can use hollow points on those weapons to get more knockdown power. But then again, you always face the possibility of an overzealous prosecutor accusing you of trying to do grievous bodily harm and trying to get sentence multipliers for you using a hollow point. So I think that just a full metal jacketed 45 ACP is more than sufficient for a car gun, and a probably a hollow point for a concealed carry Glock 19. That's the way I would do it. And then, yeah, so Daniel Defense is good for gun insurance, says Real Chris 2024 in Texas. And look, I'm a Texas lawyer, so Real Chris, I'm going to do some more research on that. They help keep you out of jail after using your gun. I didn't know that Texas required you to have gun owners insurance. You learn something new every day. Maybe Texas isn't the place I want to live after all. I want to live somewhere where my government supports my ability to protect my family unencumbered and unhindered by the state. So, guys, with that being said, I'm going to go train. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do or die. God bless all you guys, man. Maybe I'll come on later if I'm not too tired. I still got to take my son to judo, but definitely would love to do some lawyer reaction videos with you on some other cool stuff that I've uncovered this weekend. Thanks, Life Under the Microscope. I really do appreciate you supporting Team MPE. God bless you, Jody Shiloh. Semper Fi, guys. Make sure to take care of your kids. Get them out of the public school.